Do you believe in ghosts?
This is the night when fear and horror walk hand in hand.
This is Black Sabbath.
Starring the incomparable Boris Karloff, the personable Mark Damon, and lush and lovely women, even though one is from the netherworld, a vampire, a Burdalak. Black Sabbath, as ancient as superstition, as modern as the telephone.
How nice you look with that towel around you. You always did have a beautiful body. Beautiful. A body to drive someone crazy.
Who are you? Who?
Black Sabbath. The bare truth about the unbelievable, such as the brilliant beauty of a priceless jewel that holds within the body of a buzzing fly, vengeful woman's murderous spirit. Only on the seventh night of the seventh full moon can the living see the lifeless undead.
I am hungry.
Is he man or vampire? An adventure into black magic that goes beyond the boundaries of the supernatural. And a man's devoted love is welcomed by a woman's deadly lust for his blood.
Hey guys, those are Communications, and welcome back to another review, this time of the 1963 anthology film, Black Sabbath. Now, Black Sabbath is an anthology horror film directed by Mario Bava. He also helped write a few of the stories. This is a film that was released through American International Pictures. Yes, it was AIP before they were what I like to call an incompetent production, because that's what they ended up becoming in the future, just releasing a lot of shitty direct-to-video movies with no budgets. But anyway, the film has 3 segments in it. It has the telephone, the Wurderlack, and the drop of water. Now, I thought at the end of the day, I thought this is an above-average film. It's a movie I wouldn't mind adding to my collection, but it's not a movie that I'd probably watch over and over again, and I wouldn't say it's one of my favorite anthologies. But I'd say there was definitely one segment which I really liked, which I thought was really tense, which I thought was really creepy, and that was the drop of water, which I thought was a very creepy, freaky, well-made segment with some really lavish, luscious cinematography. Mario Bava also did some uncredited cinematography for the film as well. And the movie was part of a deal that that AIP Pictures did with an Italian production company, and it was cheaper to make anthology films, so they decided, okay, let's do the anthology films instead of just a straight up movie. So American International Pictures, AIP, actually secured the rights to have American actors Mark Damon and Boris Karloff. And then other international companies worked along with try to get more cast, more actors for the film. The French co-production companies, Société Cinématographique Lydia, secured Michele Mercier and Jacqueline Pierreux, who was credited under the pseudonym of Jacqueline Susar. Mercier had actually previously worked with director Mario Bava on his films The Wonders of Aladdin, and the Italian production company Galetta, who was the one that had the deal with AIP, had Susy Andersen cast while retaining Mario Bava, who had directed their production of Black Sunday. Now, Bava is credited to writing the film script along with Alberto Bevilacqua and Marcello Fondato, and the film's opening credits credit the stories as The Drop of Water by Ivan Chekhov, The Telephone by F.G. Snyder, and Semya Vertikala by Alexei Tolstoy. Those credits are false, as Snyder and Tolstoy were fictional. Bava later took credit for the original story, Drop of Water, while Italian critic Antonio Buccini had traced its origins to a story called Delle tre e mezzo, between 3 and 3:30, that was included in a 1960 anthology book titled Storie di Fantasmi, Ghost Stories. British historian Julian Granger identified the author of the story as Franco de Cheteni. The Wurderlac is loosely based on the family of the Wurderlac by Alexei Konstantinovich Tolstoy, and the other parts of the story were inspired by Guy de Maupassant's story Fear and Bram Stoker's Dracula. It was decided early on in production that Boris Karloff would not only star in one of the tales, but also act as the film's host, as he had done in his recent television series Thriller. So Karloff was cast in the film as he had a contract with American International Pictures, whom he had just made The Raven with. So the film, it has a different sort of order depending on what country you see it in. In Italy, the order is different. So Black Sabbath was actually more violent. It was more sexualized. It was more downbeat than a lot of horror films that were created in America. So American International Pictures focused on a youth-oriented audience. So they ended up cutting a lot of stuff out. This led to the American edit and removing plot elements of prostitution and lesbianism, making the most altered of Bava's films on its English language version. These moments of prostitution and lesbianism were featured in the telephone storyline, and it explains a lot to me, because I saw the American version, and it explains to me how disjointed and how kind of weird this ghost story aspect to that segment is. It's really weird. It's like, what is this ghost story stuff? Like, well, there's a ghost, but he's not. I don't know what's going on here. It looked like it was edited, and I was right. It was. Some other changes they did. They changed all 3 stories. They didn't really edit a lot of them other than the telephone, but they changed the order. So AIP started out with The Drop of Water, which is the strongest story, followed by the telephone and then the Wurderlac. The telephone removed any suggestions of lesbian relationship between Rosie and Mary, as well as references to prostitution. The character of Frank is no longer a pimp, but he's a ghost. And that's really explained how I didn't care for that segment, because I'm like, what is this? Why is he a ghost? She stabs him in the end. I didn't know you were able to stab ghosts, but I'll get into that later a little bit when I talk about the segment. There's a few, the Wurderlac features alternative cuts of certain scenes and has violence trimmed from the Italian version. And The Drop of Water features the least amount of changes, but it was put first. Now, A&P also completely changed the Roberto Nicolosi soundtrack from the original film with the soundtrack from Les Baxter. I had to say some of the bits of the score, especially for the Drop of Water soundtrack, I really liked, as well as some bits and pieces from the Wurderlac. I didn't like the telephone soundtrack that Les Baxter did. It was just a lot of saxophone stuff. It was jazz music, and it seemed way out of place for what they were trying to do. And also, even the actual cinematography, the colors are different. American International Pictures shipped their version of the film to Pathé Color for processing, which makes it so their version is a little bit more vibrant and colorful, while the Italian version is a little bit darker. It's more vibrant, more flamboyantly nightmarish. The English language print looks less nuanced, but with flatter tonalities. It doesn't look too bad, but the Italian version is a little bit more subtle. A little bit more to that. Now, the film also, actually, huge influence of Black Sabbath is Boris Karloff enjoyed working with Bava so much on Black Sabbath that he praised his work to both Christopher Lee and Vincent Price, who would later go on to work with Bava with The Whip and the Body and Dr. Goldfoot and the Girl Bombs, which I've never seen, which is a really kind of funny title. And plans were initially going to be made to involve Bava and Karloff working together in a film titled Scarlet Friday, based on the Dunwich Horror. But the project was then later taken away from Bava and was released as a Dunwich Horror directed by Daniel Haller without Karloff involved. The English music group Black Sabbath they appropriate their name from the film. Originally known as Earth, which is kind of a really lame title, the group wanted to change their name as another group had the same name. So the group saw local cinema playing Black Sabbath and marveled that people paid money to be frightened. Directors Roger Avary and Quentin Tarantino were influenced by Black Sabbath's story structure for their original script for Pulp Fiction. The film was originally going to be 3 short films, with each one being directed by Avary, Tarantino, and another unknown director. Tarantino originally described this idea by stating, "What Mario Bava did with a horror film in Black Sabbath, I was going to do with a crime film," which ultimately is not what actually happened. So it kind of makes you think that originally maybe Roger Avary and Quentin Tarantino were thinking about making sort of like a Sin City, but Pulp Fiction, which is interesting. Anyway, Black Sabbath. What can I say about this movie? I'd probably say I thought it was I liked it okay. I liked it, and I didn't love the film, but I thought it was an above-average horror anthology, mainly because there was one really, really strong story. It was The Drop of Water, which is a very tense, freaky, scary, well-made, well-edited, great story, which literally gave me goosebumps, and has some really striking imagery in it, and has some really great, luscious, lavish photography. Now, The Drop of Water, it starts out in London, England, where Nurse Helen Chester, played by Jacqueline Pierreux, she's called to a large house to prepare the corpse of an elderly medium for her burial. As she dresses the body, she notices a sapphire ring on its finger. And the image of the elderly medium, the dead medium, is the thing that is just so creepy. It's just the grimace, the grimace on her face, and the way her eyes are set. It just, you have to see it to honestly really understand, to get what I'm talking about. But it's a really, she's got like this really disturbing, rictus grin on her face, which is really creepy. And so what happens is Nurse Helen Chester, you find out she's really not the best kind of person. She ends up stealing the ring from a dead woman. I mean, which is an awful thing. She trips over a glass of water, which then drips on the floor, and then a fly ends up flying at her. Because what happens, I like the little shots that this segment had, where as soon as she took the ring off of the medium's finger, the fly would land right where, in the place where the ring was. And kind of little bits like that, little bits of creepiness like that, which I like. So, nothing jump scare about it, but, it actually is able to actually still, creep you out. That was creepy. And then she takes the ring, she steals it, she takes it back to her home, and she becomes, assailed by all these crazy events. The fly returns and continues to pester her. The lights in her apartment go out, and then you start hearing the sound of the dripping water from all different various locations in the house. And the film does a really great job with the sound design and everything of this whole dripping water stuff. And she thinks she's found out, she thinks she stops the dripping water in one thing, the faucet, okay. Then the bathtub starts dripping. Gotta stop the bathtub. Then she's hearing some other dripping and find out it's her umbrella is dripping water. And so you're just thinking, okay, it's nothing. It's just water, it's just a coincidence, so to speak. It's not haunted or anything. And then the fly keeps bugging her. And then after seeking the source of the sound, she ends up trying to look more for the dripping water. And she starts hearing it in another place. And she finds the woman's corpse lying in her bed, which is a really creepy image. And then it rises up, and then it floats towards her. And I was like, I literally was like, and it's creepy because the look on this corpse's face is like really, really, I can't really do it justice. It's just like, it's really disturbing. It's unnerving. And so it's floating towards her. And I thought the makeup effects for a film, that was done in 1963 were pretty good, I thought. And actually, there's a little bit of trivia involving that segment, I think, where you have Bava. I think he worked on the model itself. Just checking. I could have sworn I saw something that was talking about the model for the the oh, I guess I can't really. I guess it doesn't talk about. I could have sworn though it talked about the drop of water segment. Talked about how it was kind of difficult to do the model of the old woman, but I guess I might have saw that somewhere else. But anyway, yeah. Anyway, that segment is a really strong segment. So pretty much what happens is this floating dead corpse goes after her. Chester begs for forgiveness as the body approaches her, but ultimately the body and the spirit inside the medium ends up making her choke herself to death. And then the next morning, the concierge, played by Harriet White Midden, discovers Chester's body and calls the police. The pathologists arrive to examine the body, only to find a small bruise on her left finger where her ring once was. And as the doctor makes this observation, the concierge appears distressed and begins to hear the dripping of water. So yeah, the great segment, really well done, really just full of dread and creepiness, and some really great atmosphere. But that's the only really good segment for me. The telephone is one of the weaker segments. It stars Michele Mercier, who's gorgeous in this. I mean, it's weaker, but I could watch this segment because Michele Mercier is just a beautiful woman, and I could just totally just watch her all night. Just watch. She's gorgeous, and she's a French call girl. And she returns to her basement apartment at night where she receives a series of strange phone calls, which made me kind of remind me a little bit of the stuff that I've seen in Black Christmas, Bob Clark's film. And the phone calls themselves were interesting and creepy. But I found the segment to be confusing, and like I mentioned earlier, rightfully so, because it was edited for the American release. So the caller soon identifies himself as Frank, her ex-pimp who had recently escaped from prison, this is the Italian, original Italian version of the film. So I'm just going to describe this isn't what it is. The American version. This is the original Italian version of the telephone, but the American version is completely different. Any reference of her pimp is completely removed. Any reference of her being a prostitute or call girl is completely removed. You're led to believe that she's just some beautiful woman who, I guess, somebody she knew or whatever named Frank made a mistake, or he got killed or something, or you don't even know how he died. You just know that she's getting phone calls from Frank and he's dead. So she's like, that's impossible. But of course, she actually ends up coming back, and he's tormenting her on the phone, and he's supposed to be a ghost, which is this American version doesn't work because you see shots of him looking through the blinds in one scene. You see, it's just they throw in this ghost shit, like sending her messages through the door, and then it disappears. And then he shows up at the end of the segment, and it tries to attack her. She stabs him, and I'm like, okay? I thought he was a ghost. How do you stab a ghost? A knife isn't gonna. How do you kill what's already dead? I mean, so the segment was confusing, and that's one of the main reasons why I didn't like this segment, is because it was confusing. You didn't know what it wanted to be, and that's understandable. It was cut. All the references to prostitution and lesbianism were cut, and I kind of got that vibe anyway with the two actresses in the segment. I thought that they were kind of giving me this sort of lesbian vibe, and I was right because that was originally the intention. But it was cut out for the American version. So this is the most altered story, and I'd actually be curious to see what the original version was, and see the original score too, because the score in this segment sucked ass. It was some really awful jazz music that wasn't creepy. It just completely took me out of the mood. It destroyed the mood of the segment. It was supposed to be creepy and eerie, and it ruined it. So, but Michele Mercier is hot and gorgeous, and it's just a really simple plot. It was just she gets these phone calls, these weird phone calls from Frank, a guy who she thinks is dead. She thinks he's dead, and he keeps harassing her over the phone. So she tries to get help from a friend who comes over, and she tries to comfort her, tries to give her a sleeping pill, and then Frank shows up and tries to kill her, and then Frank actually kills her friend, he strangles her, and then he goes in and tries to kill Michele Mercier, and she stabs him, and that's it. It's not much of a I don't even think, even if I did see the Italian version, it still wouldn't be much. The only thing it would just be the added. It wouldn't be as confusing because the ghost plot would not be in there because the ghost plot just makes no sense, and rightfully so. Now the third and final segment is the Wurderlack, which is a sort of taken a vampire tale where it's a vampire only feeds on those that it loves the most, which I thought was an interesting idea. This segment is really well done and well shot and well acted. Has some hot girls in it as well. It's luscious cinematography, just like The Drop of Water and The Telephone. I mean, the whole film is really great cinematography. It looks great. It looks fantastic. The lighting is just, everything is just really well done in this movie. That's one of the main reasons why I would say I liked it. It's an above average film for me, even though I didn't love every segment. Every segment was worth watching because it was just lush. It was beautiful to look at. The cinematography was a work of art in itself, and it was engaging just because it was just really great cinematography. And of course, Michele Mercier was hot, the trot, and the first Drop of Water was a very tense, well done segment, which had me on edge and got me unnerved throughout. And this one had its creepy moments too. There's a little bit of gore, which I thought was pretty shocking. I mean, you see a person with no head. You don't see the decapitation, which is funny because the poster art shows that somebody, basically looks like a headless horseman. There's no headless horseman in this movie, unlike what the American poster art would want you to believe. This is also the longest segment, and I think it drags. It really does. I think the Wurderlack segment is a bit boring. It's a bit dull. It's it's the reason why I wouldn't say it's my favorite. I'd probably say it's my second favorite after The Drop of Water. And it being here is one of the main reasons why I also feel that it's an above average horror anthology, because it's still an engaging, interesting, I thought well-made segment. It just was it was kind of really slow. It was really slow. But it definitely had its fair share of creepy atmosphere. And really creepy moments. Boris Karloff was great. A little bit that his part that he had here, and he had a lot of problems actually. What's interesting is he while filming this segment, he contracted pneumonia, which then led him to having to rely on oxygen tanks after production ended, which is really too bad. But pretty much the Wurderlack takes place in 19th century Russia, where Vladimir Durfey, played by Mark Damon, is a young nobleman who finds a beheaded corpse with a knife plunged into its heart. After taking the blade, he finds a small cottage for shelter. Durfey is then approached by Giorgio, played by Glauco Onorato, who explains that the knife belongs to his father, who has not been seen for 5 days. Giorgio offers a room to Durfey, who introduces him to the rest of the family, including his wife, Rika Dalina, and their young son, Ivan. And Giorgio's younger brother, Pietro, played by Massimo Righi, and his sister, Sadenka, played by Susy Andersen. And they all await the return of Gorka, who has gone to fight the Wurderlack, a living cadaver who feeds on human blood, especially of close friends and family members, which that's what made this sort of vampire segment stand out to me. And I'd heard of this film, and I'd heard of the Wurderlack before, because it was mentioned, I think, in the Encyclopedia of Monsters, which I remember checking out from the library as a kid. And I was always curious about it. I always looked at it as like one of the weirdest names for a vampire I've ever heard of. The Wurderlack. I mean, it sounds really silly. It does. The Wurderlack. It sounds like something that a quack came up with. It doesn't really sound that scary. But the idea I like, though, the vampire, it has a set of rules. It only feeds on those that it loves the most. Which I thought was kind of a terrifying idea. So at midnight, Gorka, played by Boris Karloff, returns to the cottage with a sour demeanor and unkempt appearance. And after the family goes to sleep, Ivan and Pietro are attacked by Gorka, who flees the cottage with Giorgio's son. Giorgio chases after Gorka, but only returns with the corpse of his son. And then Giorgio plans to stake and behead Pietro to prevent him from arriving as a Wurderlack, but he's prevented from doing so by his wife. The two agree and then give their son a burial. But then that same night, their child appears outside and begs to be invited in a creepy, well-done scene. Giorgio is then stabbed by his wife while she attempts to let in her son. On opening the door, she's greeted by Gorka, who bites her and her son. And then Vladimir and Sadenka, who was played by Susy Andersen, who's gorgeous, gorgeous blonde. They flee from their home and then hide out in the ruins of a cathedral. And this looks like it's a real cathedral, like a real ruins. Really, really good set. And then great location. And then as Vladimir sleeps, Zdenka walks outside and finds Gorka and her family surrounding her. Vladimir awakens and searches for Zdenka, and finding her lying motionless in her bed at home. And then Zdenka awakens upon receiving Vladimir's embrace, and she bites into his neck. Because I pretty much I saw that coming. Like I knew how that segment was going to end from the beginning. So that's another reason why it's kind of it's not my favorite segment. It's a bit predictable at points. It drags, but it's well made. It's well shot. Boris Karloff does a good job. It's well directed by Bava. Some really great cinematography, good score, and all around a great atmosphere. So anyway, that's the last segment, and that's Black Sabbath. It's a film that I wouldn't mind adding to my collection if I could find it for cheap sometime. I'd recommend it if you're a fan of anthology films, you're a fan of Mario Bava, if you're a Boris Karloff fan, check it out. If none of the other stories sound really interesting to you, I would suggest at least definitely check out Drop of Water. If you don't check out any other segment, if you can just find the Drop of Water on YouTube, give it a look, unless these other segments sounded worth a watch. Either way, I think the whole movie is worth a watch, to be honest, because of it's just a really well-made, well-shot film. But it just doesn't have that, I would say I liked it, but it's not a movie I would watch over and over again. Because it doesn't have that fun. It doesn't have that sense of fun that like Creepshow has, for instance. It has one really great creepy segment, second segment which is confusing and muddled because the Americans edited it to shreds, and even then the story isn't super interesting, and then a third segment which is overlong and has its creepy moments, but it's pretty predictable at the same time. But still, I liked it. I like Black Sabbath. So I really don't know what to say about the film. It said rated out of 5 stars. Like I said, I think it's an above average film. I'd give it 3.5 out of 5 stars. I wouldn't give it 4 because I didn't like the Warlock segment enough. Mainly a lot of it's for Drop of Water, which is a great segment. I really like that segment a lot. So yeah, I don't know what to say except thank you for watching my review of Black Sabbath, and I will see you guys later. See ya.